Okay, welcome back to the Heart of Medicine interview series. We forgot to introduce ourselves to you last time, our apologies. So my name is Jane.
And I'm Gavin, and we're here again with the second part of our chat with Teja. If you haven't heard the first part, don't worry, it's still available online, and we plan on keeping it there for you, so make sure you have a listen to it. In this second half hour, Teja covers a lot of good stuff. A few things that jumped out for us was how he's simplified his practice over the years.
Yeah.
He expands more on Hunyuan medicine, and in particular how it applies to fertility.
That's right.
He touched a little bit on it in the first half of our chat, but he goes into a little bit more depth
in
here.
this part.
And then, yeah, we really liked some of the connections that he's made between martial arts and medicine, and he goes into a little bit more of those this time.
Yeah. The other thing that he touches upon, which is really good for students who are currently studying TCM, like Gavin and myself, he shares a lot of great advice for students. And we all know how complicated a process it could be.
Yeah.
So listening to what Teja has to share would be really, really valuable. Oh, and one last thing is if you find yourself asking why Teja keeps referring to yellow beans, black beans.
He's not crazy.
No, he's not crazy. And a story of Shi Yingfu. This is something that is shared in Hunyuan, The Lost Heart of Medicine, which is the book Teja and Yaren co-wrote. So without further ado, here's Teja.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Do you feel like that part of medicine, that centre that you keep relating back to in the book, because I feel like that's not taught at uni at all. I mean, we're not, like, there's nothing about self-cultivation, there's nothing about, how to be a good physician.
It doesn't fit in with a Bachelor of Health Science.
No.
Because health sciences are based, and even in the realm of psychology, health sciences are based on physical structure, what chemical imbalances and what have you. And TCM, particularly since the 50s or so, it has been to try and follow the same model as Western medicine.
Yeah.
And centre and all this thing, even though you're studying Zhongyi, Zhong means what?
Zhong, centre.
Centre medicine.
Yeah. Zhong.
Not Chinese medicine at all. It just happens to be that China calls itself Zhongguo. It's got nothing to do with the medicine. It's talking about the centre, medicine of the centre. That's why there's a straight line through the middle of this straight line, shung, because we're always on this. So when we're in health, that straight line is all messed up. We're off in the past, in the future, or whatever. The straight line says right here, right now. This is when the medicine is. So you are studying it, but at the moment you're studying it from the edges, and you're working your way in. But already you have the clue that there's something in the middle there that is all important, regardless of all the fancy stuff. Regardless of the fancy Shanghai or Wenbing, whatever. These are all fantastic and they're wonderful. But again, they're pointers saying, look inside, and we're just looking at the finger going, oh wow, look at the formula. Okay? And what we'll do is, whenever we see a patient who roughly fits that, we'll apply that formula to the patient. It's Western medicine. Western medicine does that. Oh, it's roughly that antidepressant. And there are Shanghai Lun practitioners that can cure all their patients. And the reason they can do that is because they've looked at the formula and at the centre and then can apply it from there. It looks the same, but something's different. And there's other Shanghai Lun practitioners who are like, crap, this hasn't worked, this hasn't worked, this hasn't worked. We could go through the whole, theoretically we just go through the whole list of formulas. The same with the Wenbing or the full levels or whichever, or pattern discrimination. I think, for me it was a necessary starting block. So what the heck am I going to do? I don't know anything. So I need my pattern discrimination, and therefore I funnel myself into that strategy. However, if I'd had from the very beginning, and what also I was seeking in the martial arts, if I had that from the very beginning, I wouldn't have needed to do all the things that I've done, you know, like you leave your school in Castle Hill and travel all the way around the world to seek that, you know, what's missing. You end up, where are you now? In Castle Hill. You know what I mean? And what was missing was you were looking out like this instead of looking in and seeking more tricks. What's the next trick, the next seminar that's going to treat me a new trick that will last about 3 weeks, and you go back to what you were doing. You know, like you'll tend, as you start to practice, after a few years you'll start to tend to do this type of work, whichever it is for you. And it's not the same as anyone else. You'll start to do these points. You tend to stick into this thing. Then you'll do a seminar and you'll come back, I've got some new tricks. You'll do them for about 2 weeks, and then you'll start to head back to what you were feeling comfortable with those patients. And it's trying to understand what that is you're starting to look inside and you're starting to get a picture of what's happening, and we just need to keep making that more concrete. And I'm doing that still, like I'm doing this. You know, I'll treat the Tai Yin or the Yang Ming or the Sha Yin, but in how, in what combination, and in what, you know, which point, either kidney 7 or 8, and why would I make that choice, and either spleen 6 or 9, and why would I make that choice? You know, that level of looking at it, as opposed to that there's 27 points on the kidney channel, and then your head is in a real mess. I'm going to treat the kidney. Which point? And why that point? And then I'm going to treat the qi. I'm going to give a qi tonic. Well, which of the qi tonics? Why Dangshan instead of Renshan or Bai Sha or Shanya or whatever? Oh, because of this, you know, theoretically, then we can just take that qi formulation, that qi tonic formulation, and replace it with any other qi tonic that fits better, and it's still that formula. And then in the Hunyuan method of approaching the herbs, it breaks it down much more simply, and it talks about direction of energy movement. That it's a circle. We've got to keep the circulation going. A circle has this energy in, energy out, energy in, energy out. What do the herbs do on that? And then where is the problem in that circulation? That's where we apply the medicine to. And then it does this, and then you're fine. That's the goal. Hard work. I'm still working on it, but that's the goal. And it's made the most sense to me out of all the different ways of thinking about it. That acupuncture, I mean, how many different schools of acupuncture are there? There's Japanese acupuncture, Korean acupuncture. I'll just put the needle in very softly, or I'll put it in this far, and then what's right and what's wrong? This is a difficult question. So, and on each to their own, because you know, everyone's getting results. But we don't want to just have 50% success results, we want 100%. How we're going to do that is by, probably never get there, but digging deeper, and not just adding extra notches on the belt, 1,000 different techniques. But if we focus instead here, then everything else should fall into line, and then the practice actually looks very simple in what you do. But it's come from this massive complexity to this simplicity. And oh, look, he's a dunce, he's just using 3 points. And he's only got 20 herbs. It's because he can't remember anymore. He's lazy. Yes, or the other way of looking at it is as a refinement. Do you know what I mean? And that's really appealing to me in medicine with the herbs that I'm using. There's simple herbs. There's licorice, ginger, Chinese yam. Do you know, these herbs are accessible. There's other herbs that are really complicated in their nature and their structure, and they do very peculiar things when ingested into the body. And then they're mixed in with a formula of 13, 14 other herbs. What the heck is going on in the body when that goes in? Do you know what I mean? Body gets very confused. And for me, it's really appealing is to have simple ingredients, strong doses, and then give it to the patient. And then if the patient, and really sometimes they might have a side effect, I don't feel good. We go, I can see, it's because, what's the side effect? I've got a headache, that's because of that herb. Extract, replace, reduce, increase, whatever. It's easier then to walk around and figure out the strategy. Or else you've got your 14 formula herb from Handbook of Medicine or whatever, and you go, didn't work, now I need to change formula. Now you've got 15 different herbs, didn't work, crap, now I need this formula. Do you see? We jump and change around. when ideally we have the structure there from our initial evaluation. Okay, this is the structure. We just need to tweak it a bit like that. That's good. Oh no, it needs to come like this. Good. Do you see? It's that for me is really appealing. Easier for my simple brain to cope with as well. And I think easier for the human body to assimilate. You got to digest it. You know, you got to break it down in your stomach and get it into the system.
It's just like when I'm working in the I work in a pharmacy on the weekends because I started off as yeah, that's right. Though that's why I got out of it, you know, because I just couldn't stand the way that it was. The whole thing was kind of run.
It's a business.
It's a business, and also it kind of was like playing sort of a doctor's secretary a little bit, or the reps for the drug companies. You know, we don't really have much of a space to make a difference, or time, as that would matter to people.
It's a big one. Time for giving and time for taking.
And that's what led me down to now where I am. But
just simply doing Chinese medicine and saying you're doing Chinese medicine doesn't take you out of that realm that you were trying to get away from. And that's why, you know, we said in the introductory chapter, there shouldn't be Chinese medicine, shouldn't be Western medicine.
It should just be medicine.
Just medicine. Medicine is either effective or defective medicine. And that is regardless of the colour of the skin or the name on the shop front. It's, you know, what is medicine about? About living people and keeping them alive. What has a living person got that a dead person doesn't have? Warmth. What is that about? That's all medicine should be focused on. Otherwise, you're over there. You're doing autopsies. Or you will be shortly with your poor patients. Keep it focused. And this is for Western medicine too. How do we keep that circulation of warmth going well? And the area is restricted. There is, let's just say, there's rheumatoid arthritis. The joint is diseased. How is that possible? How is it possible for that to happen? And the only reason that there can be that possibility is that the healing capacity of the body has failed. And often at the aid of medications or herbs that we give to try and fix the problem. I see redness, swelling, heat and pain, inflammation. So what am I going to do about that? I'm going to apply ice to it because ice cools the heat and the pain and the swelling. I'm going to apply icy herbs to it because icy herbs clear that inflammation, or it could be eczema, it could be psoriasis, it could be any signs of menopausal hot flushing, any signs or symptoms of heat in the wrong spot, not circulating well. Needs deeper thinking on that. Needs deeper thinking. Or else we see that the rash went away and we're very happy, like our small leaves on our trees. How brief that light doth shine when you burn it from both ends, you know. Cold from the outside, cold from the inside.
So how do we as practitioners, because we obviously we should stay ahead of our patients, right, in terms of awareness and that sort of thing. Where do we start as practitioners? And for you, did it start from martial arts and you brought that into medicine, or because you had your training, you had a grounding in it?
Yeah, I think the medicine has more affected my martial arts than the other way.
Oh, okay.
The martial arts led me to it, like physically I ended up doing that because of so the martial arts made me physically go to China and be exposed to Chinese medicine. And then the study of it and working with Chinese medicine, and then particularly since working in the Hunyuan Research Institute, has started to finally fill the voids in both of those. So the training at this martial arts school has changed since this medicine study. Do you know what I mean? Again, it's the same principle that's applying, because there's a trillion different techniques that you can use for, let's just say, someone's going to punch you in the head. What do you do? What's the technique? Well, A, B, you could list 1,000 different things, do you know what I mean, that you could do. And that's why there's so many different martial arts, because, well, when they do that, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, or whatever. when we try and isolate, we get to the principle of the matter and we say, there's someone punching me in the head. Why on earth would that be the case? Why would someone be punching me in the head?
Yeah.
How do I get out of this headlock? How did you get into the headlock? How is it even possible that someone got you in a headlock? They had to get their arm right around your neck like this. Like this movement had to happen. Why didn't you do something then? Why were you standing with your back to them? All these other things. And then they're simple things, and then it gets down to, why are we in this state of animosity towards each other?
Yeah.
Why is there this aggression? Where is it coming from? Is it a reflection of my own fear, etc.? And then that comes across in the training, not because like I'm talking to you guys now because you know about it, because the kids won't know about any of this. You don't lecture them about it, but it comes across in who you are as a person and a teacher, and that as a role model to them starts to bridge that gap without intellectualizing it. Write me an essay, to these kids on how to do this centre business. It's just not possible. But in the way you react to them and deal with them, if you're coming from that same centre, the same centre as we're trying to find in this medical paradigm, and it's not yin and it's not yang, because yin and yang are the flux around the centre, or rather contained in the centre. We're not trying to increase or decrease yin or yang. And that's an easy distraction, is because I see a really red tongue, cracked, yin deficiency, I need more yin. We're dealing at a certain level there, and we say, well, the heat has destroyed the yin, and then we need to put more yin in on top by application of cool, moist, wet herbs, shu di, sticky, cloying. What does sticky and cloying do to someone's circulation? And there's certain times when that is necessary, for sure, 100% for sure. But perhaps, in my previous practice, when I started, perhaps 90% of the time I was using it incorrectly. I saw and I reacted spontaneously with this to match that, without understanding that there's a center or a circle that contains those things. And when we keep that focus and understand that, then oftentimes when we're applying chi scattering, blood scattering, shattering herbs, or cold, bitter, or cold, sweet, cloying medicinals, or acupuncture that scatters, sometimes we're not quite on the mark then. When, if we just redirected energy to center, the body would take over that process itself without you doing it. And that's something really cool, because then the patient's body learns, it recovered itself. And then what are the factors that bring us out of center? Most of the time they're diet and lifestyle things, emotional reactions that we have, or stuff like we talk, like in the Shi Info story, Hunyuan talks about at the end, is that our impropriety transfers then off through our epigenetic code. He didn't use that word, but perhaps we can use it now, into our offspring, and then to our offspring's offspring, and then our grandchildren are saying, why am I so sick? And interesting for me is that I'm looking back at me now. I've been unwell. I'm saying, well, how's that possible? And looking back at my parents and grandparents and my grandparents, my grandmother and father were extracting my dad when he was just a baby out of Germany and being chased by the Nazis because they didn't agree with what was going on. So he spent his whole younger years racing around, being chased for his life, as a baby. His first word that he could speak was angst, which means fear. And what is that? And then when we translate that into, okay, what does that do to the corporeal body? What does that do? And then how does that then translate into his offspring? What is fear, and what is the kidneys and the Shao Yin and what have you? And then what is it that then leads that person to be predominantly weaker in that area, and therefore their cultivation needs to be predominantly more in that area. And then I've done all this martial art training, Why? To overcome, at the heart of it, a fear. A fear of what? A fear of dying. A fear of our eventual, we're mortal beings and we're going to perish. And then, and what did my dad have as a baby? He had this fear that he was going to perish as well. Do you know what I mean? So we when we think about it that way, then we become less critical of ourselves, and not critical of our parents, but more of a broader picture understanding. And then when we see the patient and we say, well, you're going to be this person that's going to have a baby and translate this on, or you're the person who's the teacher of these children, you're going to teach this. Do you see? Because you have, you know, we don't remember Confucius just because of the children that he had, because of his thought and his teaching. It's another way of giving birth. But physically, let's just say we see our patient, she can't fall pregnant. She's going to fall pregnant. One day. We're going to use luteal and follicular formulas to get her ovulation just right so that she falls pregnant. Done. But what about all the rest of this stuff that's going on that's going to translate? Is that our business or not our business? It's our business, because we know that those things affect the gametes, affect the structure of the cellular body that will affect the baby. That's our business. It's not to give them a baby because they'll be happy and mum will be happy that she's succeeded in having a baby. It's that hopefully baby is a little bit healthier than it would have been otherwise. And that then translates onto then how they interact with the world, hopefully later on. Same with the martial arts. The kids come in, we teach them respect and discipline and kindness, so that when they leave, hopefully that translates out into their greater world. Not necessarily that they can kick someone's butt, but that they learn a way of being through example and through training, that they learn a respect for themselves and their body, and that they learn a respect for other people, particularly young boys learning a respect for the girls, and then this translates on, you know, and we don't hopefully have not so much issues as we do.
Do you think a similar kind of structure of tenets, like we have in martial arts, do you think that could translate across to medicine?
It could, but then everyone will rebuke you about it and argue about it like we do in martial arts. You do this martial art, I do this martial art. My martial art's better, your martial art's this. And that's why we have, particularly in Chinese Kung Fu schools for some reason, is everyone's so isolated. It's my, me, and our, and our system. And at the heart of it all, it's all the same. Like the applications and the techniques are different, but what we're trying to do is the same. And it's just there's a problem with ego and a problem with, I don't know what it is. But again, there should be not Chinese martial arts and whatever. There should be just martial arts. But again, then it's a cultural thing. Like we've got to perpetuate the Chinese culture or the Japanese culture, and they have different things, and I understand those things, but what it tends to do is then lead to division, to separation, and we know what separation does. It scatters, and separation has a purpose, so we wake up in the morning, but without the balance of doing this other business of unification, of coming back, then we find that we do have this we're all little separate schools of thought. And so ideally, yes, we'd have a tenets of medicine, the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. This is something that we all abide by.
Turning to Hippocratic Oath at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And even when they have that as their tenet, it's still, So that's why the story of Shu Yinfu, I think, is so pertinent to medicine. Is because it tries to overcome that by putting the onus not on someone's school or someone's teacher or how famous this, that or the other, but rather puts the onus on the individual to work on their own cultivation, and not then say I had a bad teacher or I had a whatever, but rather to say in the past I was ignorant, and that was fine, it was no one's fault. But now I'm trying to remove myself from that ignorance, or as he uses in the book, the Hmong hexagram, with the mountain sitting on top of the water, and eventually the water can escape that and be free again. And that mountain on top of the water, the Hmong hexagram, he calls childhood ignorance, and eventually we will escape that. It just depends on when it will start escaping. And I'm hoping that I'm starting to escape it. But in 10 years, I'm like, I still had that mountain on me then. But yeah, if we all took on board that idea of the Shu Yinfu story in our practice and in who we are each day, even though we might not have so many yellow beans, We might have a lot of espresso coffee beans. That's how I buy them in bulk espresso beans, because I need them. But at least in that way, then we're all on the same path towards it, and be open to listen, but then also mindful enough to understand that I'm listening, but what I'm hearing they're talking about the leaves. And that's really, it's great, and it's complicated, and it's fascinating, and it's technical, and it's lots of colours, and it's beautiful. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and figure out how that applies to centre, and if that adds or detracts, because oftentimes things can detract, and we can off on a different wrong path, and then I'll have to come back. And that can be necessary to learn. We need to do all these wanderings off, but without the principle of finding and staying on centre, then how do we know? Where do we know? And that's what oftentimes myself and my colleagues, after we finish university, like, how do we know where to go? Where are we so lost? It doesn't need to be that way. I think it can be made a little bit easier by taking a concept like that and then applying it to where you're going, and then not being blinded, but also not being distracted.
See, if those principles were set out first, in first year uni, like right at the beginning, then the rest of the course will just have that as,
It'd be nice.
It would be, it would be, really, it would be, because
it's. And it would be nice for the introduction to it all to be made very simple, and understanding those principles, and then from there working outwards. But what happens is we work from outwards inwards, because we're based on the Western model. And you're doing it at university. You're lucky to be doing it at a university, and you're getting a degree, and you're going to be recognised practitioners nationally because of that structure. We're thankful for that structure. Of course, there could be things that could be improved. The course that you're doing now, I'm not sure, is 100 times better now than it was when I did it. And just because the teachers are learning new things about how to educate the students. But the teachers themselves are fantastic. The teachers, top-notch teachers. Just the material they had to teach was all of this stuff out here. And if they were allowed to, at the start of each topic, to say, this is the centre, this is our purpose, and now in our Shanghanlong topic we're going to come at it like this, and now in Wenbing we're going to come at it like this, and now from the Western cranial sacral acupuncture we're going to come at it like this, or whatever the topic might be. But it's all getting back to this one point.
That would make learning a lot, because it would make learning much less scattered, and less scattered in students' mind as well, because they're feeling sort of overwhelmed by all the different facets that we have to grasp, and not knowing, okay, what's the important principle I should learn here, what's the important focus I should, distill from this big, massive book, and then sort of feeling inside just squandering in confidence and going, okay, what now?
What do I do?
What do I do now?
What do I read? What do I take from it? And do I have to memorise it? And is that the key, that I'll memorise this whole book? And how many books can we memorise? And I think there is a case for having to go through the hard work of memorising and reciting the formulas. And I think it's important. Equally important is the understanding behind the formulas about what the principle of each medicinal is doing. And then when we get distracted by, because remember we're doing Chinese medicine, not Western medicine with Chinese herbs, or Western medicine with Chinese acupuncture. That's not what I'm doing or trying to do, because Western medicine does that stuff far better. It can kill things really quickly, and cut things out really quickly. What does Chinese medicine, at the heart of it, or the lost heart of it, what does it have? It has this principle of helping the body recover itself, so that our lineage continues, our reincarnation, as it were, continues healthily forward. If we can find that and stick to that, and then some of these other things we put a lot of emphasis on studying, might be a little bit less emphasis, and understanding perhaps, but not necessarily memorising 500 different chemical compounds of those ingredients, which are important. But when you're using the medicine, and as I've come through like the 300 different herbs to now 30 or so main herbs I'm using, a lot of them, they're simple ingredients. Again, we're not talking about vastly complex. There's a couple, yes, vastly complex ones, but on the main part, very simple ingredients, and very safe to use with all the complicated Western medicines that they're giving. And so, yeah, I think, you're right that if there was a way of translating this idea to students, I would have loved to have had it, and would have been able to guide me a little bit better in my focus on what I studied, because I did study everything to the nth degree, and then those really core, beautiful bits they were all studied the same amount, 10% on each little bit. And then if I could have directed 50% of energy there, I would have saved a lot of trouble to get to where I am now. But again, I'm here, and in 10 years I hope to be here, and in 10 years I might be retracting my current statements. So it's difficult because it's published in a bloody book.
So again, from the student's sort of perspective, obviously learning our curriculum is vital, especially if we want to pass and get our degree so we can practice. But while we're sort of on that path, is there anything that you think realistically we could, any practices or particular texts we should study, just to sort of try to begin to develop that centre while we're studying it, and not let us get carried away so much with the leaves?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because I'll obviously just say read that book. But that's biased. I'm trying to think to when I was a student, and what would have really helped me.
Were you trained all through high school, uni? That has never stopped, has?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Was that a part reference point for you?
Well, part of it was that the training, Kung Fu is a way of life.
Yeah.
It's forever.
Yeah.
Meaning that you don't just get your black sash or you get your certificate or your degree and then you're done.
Yeah.
And so what that has helped me with in regards to the Chinese medicine as a student is, this might be my white belt level or whatever, and then my next as I go through the years of the university. But the purpose isn't to achieve those external results. It's to say, well, what is that doing, inside to make me better what? Better at, well, as we found out through the book, better at my relationships. And that's where it comes down to, again, at the very end of all the fancy formulas, is the relationships. So the wife has a dysfunctional relationship with the husband, but won't do anything about it, and so will give Shaya some. Do you see that there isn't going to be a resolution to this problem? There'll be maybe an amelioration. So the relationships, and what often happens when we're studying is our relationships suffer because we're so focused on this. So our time with our parents, or our time with our siblings, or our time, with our partners, etc. I think, when my master passed away, and his words are at the end of the book, he said, I wish I'd spent more time with my family. He spent so much time working and working and working and working and teaching and teaching and teaching, that he didn't have as much time for his family. And at the very end, what he said is that's what, so at his heart, there was this pure wish to be spending time with his family. But his whole life he had to work so hard he couldn't spend as much time as he wanted to with them. So whilst it's important as well to learn about all these things for your patients, equally or far more so for yourself, because you can't be discussing improper relationships with your patients when your own are so. It doesn't work because it doesn't translate across. You're not talking from your heart, you're talking from your brain. So no, I think about this and I think, but when you talk from here because you felt it and you know it, then when they hear it, you're talking heart to heart. And so probably if I was a student again, I would probably try and spend more time with my family and my important relationships, and not sacrifice everything to intellectual, mental masturbation, as it were, which can be very gratifying, but in the end there's no baby. But the relationships form, and create those a real creativity.